we're trying to rearrange our lives by what we had once experienced, and yet our consciousness is always moving forward. And therefore, oftentimes people will experience a very stagnant life because they are trying to use the past. And if the past didn't work out, you're creating the past now. You're creating the past now. Therefore, every day is like the same day.
Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Her podcast. Today I am sitting down with Dr. Ray, and he is a best-selling author recognized by the team behind the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. He has a doctorate in clinical psychology, 28 years experience as a life and relationship coach, and has even shared stages with people like Marianne Williamson, Bruce Lipton, John Gray, and even Eckhart Tolle. Today I am sitting down with Dr. Ray, and we are talking all about manifestation. We're diving deep into the law of attraction, how manifestation truly works, what you may have been missing in your journey, and I just really appreciate the way Dr. Ray just brings it to you as it is. See, manifestation can often be, told as a very mysterious process, but in reality, we're working with different laws, we're creating something for ourselves, and it's not that complicated, and I feel like that's something Dr. Ray really brings to the table, as well as giving us secrets, hacks, tips, tricks to get unblocked out of your own way. I know you're really going to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Ray onto the show. Hello, Ray. Welcome to the show. I am so happy you are here. How are you doing today?
I'm here.
That's good.
Presently here, physically here, spiritually here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. I'm so happy for everything we're going to talk about. Why don't we just start by just learning a little bit about you?
Well, so I'll give my boring credentials. I have a master's in counseling psychology and a doctorate in clinical psychology, but primarily my work is more kind of intertwined with Eastern philosophy. I've trained under Montauk Chia. That's an example. So I also can teach Qigong, but I've always been interested also in science. I'm a Joe Dispenza fan. So my excitement comes from living my life in a spiritual way, understanding how the universe works. And it's so amazing when it's validated by science. And so the work I do, and when I work with my clients, and I've worked with over 6,000 clients, I've been a coach for a really long time, that we are going to talk about law of attraction. However, clients that I see typically are working with me on like the typical things, trying to manifest a better relationship, manifest a better job, alleviate maybe tension, improve their communication. And what's always interesting with that is most of these people would not show up with the idea of like, hey, I want to be a better manifester. I heard this thing called the law of attraction, so I'm calling you Dr. Ray. They were always coming to me more to work with like life problems. But what the positive result would be when they would shift their emotions, their negative emotions, their self-sabotaging, say, patterns and beliefs, then the world seemed to become easier outside of them, that they started, for whatever reason, seeing more of the light in others, to maybe they started listening to better sides or better versions of people, to where they got that promotion, they attracted that woman, they started attracting things. And it's because we shifted their emotions, we shifted their consciousness, because if you don't, what you keep seeing, what you keep attracting, and the way you interpret it is going to be the same. So when we want to attract great things, then we have to feel those great things right now, whether it's walking our dog, eating a cookie, or gardening, or whatever, that the more and more we are in our joy, more and more we're feeling good, then things become easier. Things show up much faster. And if there are people who've listened to Abraham, and I remember when I became, I got my doctorate, and there was a time in my life where I made things so damn complicated. And so I would hear Esther or I'd hear Abraham say, just think of something you like for a moment, like a cookie or something. I'm like, wait a minute, you're not doing the shadow work. You need to go deeper. This is just blah, blah, blah. And I get it now. She was absolutely correct. And it was this, that she was trying to shift a participant's consciousness to something that was more open at a higher frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all. And that's all it takes. And so for me, my work in the law of attraction, it encompasses all of that. And it's this. It's where, sure, we have earth problems. Sure, we might have relationship issues. And if we don't work on ourselves, we'll keep repeating the same pattern over and over and so forth. And when we end up shifting who we are from the inside out, and I'm not talking about faking it, I'm talking about where we become our authentic self, then the world just becomes more beautiful. The relationships become richer, and we attract the things that we really desire.
I love that so much. And I love that you blend so many, just listening to you. It's like you're blending psychology with, like spiritual awakening type stuff, law of attraction with who we are being and with what we are doing, but from that place of being. And it just feels to me, that's the way that I see this. That's the way that my channel describes it to me, is like, it's an accumulation of all of it. It's not one thing. It's not just psychology or just shadow work or just, meditating or levitating or whatever you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's when it comes all together. And sort of my perspective on that, it's like for a full-bodied human experience, because we are spirit, but we are also human, the part that I have to learn so much. It's like I'm way more comfortable out there, but coming here, being human, stimulation, identities, responsibilities, dreams, goals, all the stuff, it can feel very tricky to go, like you said with Abraham, well, I can't just think of it. I can't just, put my thoughts there. Like you said, what about inner child work? What about shadow work? And I love that you kind of came to that realization. And it's also a little bit of both. My perspective anyway, is that everything Abraham says, or the law of attraction for what it is, it's true. It is true. And it's that shifting who we're being. And sometimes we need a little bit of shadow work to illuminate some of the things we've been doing, but we don't need to always stay in that either, because we realize life is always feedbacking off of us. And as you said, open up to that greater perspective. So much more can come in than just chasing the next limiting belief, chasing the next ego, whatever. I got to get rid of my ego, like that. Let me know the last time that anyone ever got rid of their ego. Have you ever seen that in all your years? Anyone ever get rid of their ego?
It's funny you share that, because I was talking to my girlfriend today about that, and it was more me saying that, more accurately, what we are attempting to do is have an integrated, healthy ego, to know the difference between right and wrong, to whether or not we want to move forward in a direction with a person and that we can trust our intuition. And so oftentimes what happens with people is that if they have unhealed trauma, and that leads the ego, you know what I mean? And the ego would say, this is a threat. And so therefore that person who has that PTSD or just unhealed trauma really communicates as if there's a threat. Yet a healthy ego, a person who's maybe done some inner work, even in a moment they're triggered, they can notice, okay, and we all do this, or maybe we don't. Some person's gonna think, oh my God, this guy's got anger issues. So let's just say we're on a freeway and someone cuts you off. I mean, I don't know. I've had the experience where I just wish I had like a 1965 Impala and just boom, right into the other lane, and, but I don't do that because I have a healthy ego.
Right.
I have a child. I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? So I understand a feeling, like an emotion that is fleeting, and yet I make sure I stay on purpose and aligned with like who I really am and where I want to go. And so that would be a more integrated, healthy ego. And that's why, if we have an argument or we feel bad, that we take pause if we're not sure, because the thing is, life is not conspiring against us. Bottom line, people are not conspiring against us. Sure, there might be one person who is trying to sue you. Sure, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general, people are not like, the world's not against you, bottom line. And I know some people might feel that, but those people who feel that, I can guarantee, because it's come up every time, not once in a while, there often is self-hate. There is the feeling of unworthiness to, I can't trust people, or people will betray you. And therefore, what they see or what they experience in the world is what's being manifested through that vibration that putting out there. And so, but when we recognize, wait a minute, this is a neutral, unconditional universe, and it's so unconditional, it will send me shit. It'll send me all the bad men who I talk crap about all the time. And why would I be surprised they keep showing up? I mean, it's physics, it's just moving, it's just moving in a direction towards me. With a healthy ego, you recognize, that, I have an emotion, I have a negative thought, and that's happening within. That's happening within. There's nothing outside of you creating that. Sure, you might be triggered, you might read something, you might even hear our voices. My voice can sound like an ex-boyfriend, and you're like, I don't even like this asshole.
Yeah.
But it's not a truth.
Yeah.
It's true that you're having an experience of what what's coming up, but what you think about me is not true. And the cause of your trigger is not because of me. It is because there's some unhealed part of, that person's experience that's getting kicked up. And I just happen to be the person they're projecting it onto.
That's exactly, well, of course, shadow work, but that's where the deeper work, it's almost like it gives you an awareness, like, hey, we have a shadow. Or I love Neville Goddard, like old school, and how he says the world is you pushed out. So it's like, once we have these awarenesses, awareness of projection, awareness of shadow, that's when we don't have to spend our entire life in shadow work, always going into the next trauma or going into, why do I do that? And why did I do that? It's more about that awareness. So when the same man showing up in 17 different skins in a relationship, or the same dynamic showing up over and over, or money, you might get a raise, but then you're back to where you were, or whatever it is, then we can become more aware of it without having to be in the work all the time. The work becomes about awareness. And it reminds me of, my channel one day said, try to respond to life instead of reacting to life. And it reminds me of what you were saying with the ego. The ego reacts to life. What the heck? And you're texting back, or you're giving them a piece of your mind. But if you just chill for a second, do whatever your tools are, take a deep breath, reset, go in nature, whatever, take a second, then we can respond to life when we're aware of the shadow or whatever else. We're like, wait a minute, I'm going to respond differently to this because I'm now sort of aware of that. Do you feel the same that way, or does that?
It's actually, do you know who Bashar is?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I'm friends with Daryl, and I've had a lot of private conversations with Bashar at Daryl's house. In fact, my book, All It Takes Is One, Drop Your One Big Hidden Belief and Master Your Life, a lot of the concepts came from our conversations. And I don't mention his name in a book, but a lot of our conversations were about, like, what's it like in a more, say, evolved civilization, not better, just evolved, like being an Essassani, whether people believe this or not. And through that, what Bashar has brought up is that, like, on Earth, you have so many limited beliefs. He said, when I was going through some, say, program to make first contact with people on Earth, that I thought it was a trick. He said they created a simulated, like, experience, and where everything was like negative, and he thought it was a joke. He thought it was a joke. He didn't realize that humans had such, like, limiting beliefs. Okay, so a big part of my book is eliminating those beliefs, a very simple process in which anyone can do some self-coaching and start chipping away those ways of, like, thinking and being in a very simple process. But one of the reasons why I'm bringing up Bashar and how it relates to kind of your question and your process is this. What's so cool about him, he's got a very grounded approach. Bottom line,
Mhm.
And so if a human says, I'm going through this and this is my experience, he'll always say, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Every recording, what are you going to do about it? Because he says that you're here in physical reality. You chose to be here. And physical reality is just as important as the higher realms. Get back in your body and live your life because you came here. This is your learning.
Mhm.
And so it always comes back to being in your body and taking action.
Mhm.
But he also tries to keep it really simple. And people will say, they'll ask him, do crystals work? Does astrology work? Does therapy work? And he always answers, you're all unique and you have your own permission slips. Some people do past life therapy, some people meditate. It doesn't really matter because or you maybe some people look at the cross, the
Mhm.
crucifix.
Mhm.
But it is your relationship with yourself still. It's just that it's a reflection with whatever that permission slip is, whether it's ayahuasca or praying or being surrounded by crystals. It's all the same thing because it's all comes from creation. And so, Bashar says it's all made of the same matter. I'm made of it, you're made of it. And so therefore, one is not superior, over the other.
Mhm.
And so that's why some of you will find yourselves really excited when you do that one thing, and yet someone else has tried this other thing. You can't do it. You think you're procrastinating, but it's just not your highest excitement. And so
Mhm.
therefore, he just really validates that. What's most important is that what you choose that works for you.
Mhm.
Bottom line.
I love that so much because this is the place where we realize like no one guru, no one teaching, no one deity, no
Mhm.
one God either is everything, has all the answers, but also is one path. Like that's my perception is it's not just one path and that's going to be the path to enlightenment, as you just beautifully said, that Brashar says is like it's your path to unfold. And
Mhm.
Ram Dass talks about that, where people will say like, oh, Ram Dass, like, should I meditate? He's like, yeah, sure. That's a great experience. He's like, or should I, do this? Oh yeah, that would be a great experience. Should I get married? Yeah, married's a great experience. Should I not get married? Oh yeah, that's great too. It's almost like that's not what it's about, is the should I's
Mhm.
and the should I's and the doing it right or wrong and the all or nothing and the black and white. It's carving out that path in the middle and finding those truths, for you and what resonates. I love that you touched on procrastination and self-sabotage. Is so many people all the time, as I know you've experienced, go, what's wrong with me? I can't do this. I can't do the 30-day thing. I always say I want to do something and I don't and it's not that there's anything wrong. There's levels of things that may be going on, or like you said, something may not be aligned with your truth. It might not be what you really want to do, or a million other reasons, but we get so in our heads. And that thing you said about the limiting beliefs, people are always looking for like a limiting belief, limiting belief. It's like, it's something that limits you. It's a belief that limits you, and
Yes.
contrast to spirit that is completely unlimited with pure potential at all times. We sit here and go, I can't do that. I'm this age, or I'm this, or it's that way. And we get ourselves in these boxes.
Yeah. There's a reason why Abraham has mentioned this little technique because it's so simple. And it's just imagine a parking spot available. That was like uh, one that she would always share with participants. And it is because it was simple, because we don't have such an emotional attachment to whether or not we get parking or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not higher charged for that
Yeah.
person. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now
Yeah.
I now get it. And so I mentioned to you that in Santa Monica, I led a law of attraction group of 10,000 people. And people were showing up, after seeing The Secret, because I started the group right after The Secret. And they said
Very smart business
it was,
move.
I know it was. I'm pretty good at marketing and things like that. But so uh, what was showing up is like these people were saying, it was easy at first. This is the law of attraction works for me sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. That is what I'd hear. I go, so it works for you when you get what you want, and it doesn't work for you when you don't get what you want. Yes, I said, it's the same feedback loop. I said, when you don't get what you want, it's probably how you're feeling. You probably created this, or that it is what you need to graduate and up level yourself to the next new version of yourself so you can create those things or attract those things.
Yeah.
So it's that. And so, in the workshops, I have to teach people that the universe is so unconditional that if there could be one person who says, this life is beautiful, there's so much ease, and things are so easy for me, and they're naive, and you might not even think this person's spiritual. Hey, let's typecast this person. Let's just imagine it's the person in Oregon, since I'm here, and it's this dude who just has a salmon hat on, and like he's like, oh, it's gonna be a great day. I'm gonna catch a bunch of fish, and what happens, and just everyone's friendly to him in his universe or his reality experience. Life is great. It just works out. His mind is innocent and so forth. Then you have another person, let's just say he's educated, he's totally in his head, he's pessimistic, he doesn't trust the government, he thinks people betray you, and the universe unconditionally will tell him that he is right. Mm-hmm. His parents betray him, his boss fires him without notice, to everything matches the hardship that he predicts anyway. Mm-hmm. And so I see this. So the law of attraction, when we see the things that we do not want, at least for myself, I get excited. Mm. I get excited because it's a new challenge. Mm. It's a new challenge that I can figure out, I can learn from, and then I can move in new action that can better my life.
That is so powerful. I love that, because the contrast, the triggers, the bill showing up when you're like, what the hell? I'm trying to manifest money. How did I get this big repair that needs to be done? It's the opposite. It's not working, right? Those are little portals to, not that it's about everything happening faster, but they are little portals to express growth, because it's giving you that feedback of something is in the way between you and what you say you want energetically. There's a belief, there's a funk, there's a pattern, there's a perception. And that thing continually showing up is literally because the universe loves you so much. I was having a time a while ago where everybody deals with 3D things, but I have chronic pain and different things that I'm healing through emotionally, physically. And sometimes there's these lows where I'm just like, why is this so freaking hard? And especially being a channel and feeling so comfortable out in the cosmos. And I get that more than I get 3D life. And sometimes it's like, why is this so hard? Why is the law of attraction? Why are we in this box? Because when you're on the right side of it, it can feel amazing. But when you're stuck in your own shit, it can feel like this life is so hard. And so I had this moment, and I heard Source say, law of attraction exists because God, Tao, universe, whatever, loves you so much. It's the eternal mirror to give you, to show you, to be present with who you are. Like, we love you so much. That's why the law of attraction's real. And it took me a while. It broke my mind open a little bit more, and was like, yeah, you know what? Like, that feedback system, if we're going, what's wrong? How am I blocked? Why can't I? It's right there. What's going wrong, or how can I attract more of this? It's right there. And that's the law of attraction. So I'd almost love to hear your perspective, like building on that, why the law of attraction is a thing, or just how it actually is helping us to move forward and to grow.
It reminds me of something Bashar shared. It's really funny. And he's said it a few times. When someone is in a hot seat, he gives them the instruction manual for success, and they continue to argue for their limitations. And his response is this: listen to how you're talking. Listen, feel your energy. And he says, if you're to look at a mirror, would you ask the mirror to smile first, or would you smile first? Because if you show up with an angry face, guess who's looking back at you? You have to smile first. You need to take personal responsibility and smile. Don't expect the world to do that which you can't. So that's kind of like my approach as well. And you asked me a question but I want to kind of bring it to a different response because I think this story will illustrate this a little bit more because it's something that's real. It's happening in my relationship right now. So my girlfriend's a coach. She's been a coach for about 20 years. And it's interesting how lately she's been kind of having to navigate through some health challenges and yet she just wants to keep working or move forward into randomly. And it wasn't randomly. There's no coincidence. I thought she can skateboard, and because she was really good at snowboarding, she gets on my longboard, and it wasn't, like a long ride. And I don't know what she did, but she slipped off and hit her tailbone. And she's actually at this very moment getting some x-rays because she started experiencing vertigo. But all these physical discomforts that she's experiencing, I think it's more the universe saying, sit down. Fucking sit down and rest. You know what I mean? And I'm sharing this because it's not like it just was random. She's actually a yogini and pretty athletic. So her fall was strange. And so a lot of times we, in our mind, we think our success or our happiness is going to come from our efforts. There's this idea that we get that this one thing that we do will fix all our problems and the tension in our bodies will alleviate. Many people will think if I only had this type of man or woman, then my life would be fulfilled and I would be excited. And most people, first off, don't attract those things because the vibration they have is, I don't have. I'm not enough. I don't feel complete. And therefore, what they attract is themselves still, and that is unavailable people, to people who don't want to take personal responsibility. It's a reflection of themselves, and so forth. So, the universe is our friend. It is our friend. It's our companion. And when we get so caught up in our head, it's really important to think about it this way. Most of us will think about what we need to do or how it's going to work out to better our lives. However, if you really understand consciousness, that's coming from a generated, contrived place within ourselves of what we know, what we have done already. In other words, we're trying to rearrange history, or we're trying to rearrange our lives by what we had once experienced. And yet our consciousness is always moving forward. And therefore, oftentimes people will experience a very stagnant life because they are trying to use the past. And if the past didn't work out, you're creating the past now. You're creating the past now. Therefore, every day is like the same day. And I'm going to bring up Bashar again, is that he has shared this, and it's that humans, in order for humans to kind of understand the past, he said that there's this idea that when you have a memory, or you think of your childhood, specifically if you are working with a therapist, that experience is coming from some part of your brain, and that it's a memory in the past. However, because all things exist now, he says what it is in this now moment, you're thinking about yourself as that child who's victimized. In this now moment, you're generating emotions and energy of what had happened. In other words, you're experiencing it now. However, for your linear mind to understand it and to articulate it, you will talk about it as if it's coming from the past, but it's being generated in a now moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody listening, go back like a minute and listen again, times about 3. That is so true. And that's where people get so tripped up on, like, what do you mean time isn't linear? This thing did happen when I was a kid. It did. It happened in 1980, whatever. Yes, okay, it happened. But when you're reliving it now, you're bringing it into the now. and life isn't only ever evolving now moment. So
Yes.
it's like we had pain then, and then we're also creating the pain now. And then we're going to create it and now again in 10 minutes, and now again tomorrow, and now again. And that's so powerful for us to realize. And I just love the way you said that. And it's so powerful. Is that why what you touched on a few minutes ago, you said when you start to get things you don't want, you can smile at them or laugh or something? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I have things that, well, first off, I'll my life has only moved forward. I mean, everyone's, by default, we're moving forward, even though it doesn't look like it for most people. Let's say that for the last 20, 30 years, I have manifested more money. I've accumulated wealth. I've created things. I'm in a good partnership. I have a good relationship with my son. He's with me full time. I have a great co-parenting relationship. My life is really good. I absolutely have zero drama. Zero drama. So there's a lot more quietness in my life. There's a lot more opportunity to take pause because of this. And what has happened since I have been living in Ashland, Oregon, is that for whatever reason, I attracted this experience to finish my book and to really understand the feminine a little deeper, to understand the sensitivities of, say, those who are like offended easy, to even learn how to soften my communication a little bit, like all of these things. However, in my personal life, when it comes to meeting men and friendships here, people are really flaky. People are really flaky, and it's known. And so, there's not a lot of masculine men here. Women complain about it. I recognize it. So I haven't developed a lot of friendships. However, I manifested this. I attracted this. Okay, so on paper, it might look perfect, such as I have a beautiful woman. Her son is close to my son's age. I have a great family. Everything has supposedly worked out. However, because I'm a spiritual, forever unfolding, conscious man, that I'm still being challenged in some shape or form by life itself, because I would prefer to meet more men here. I would prefer to have maybe a little more exciting things to do here. But I am where I'm supposed to be this very now moment, because the universe is unconditional. And also, the universe didn't promise me that when I would manifest all these things, I would be completely happy. It was just, for me, I thought these were those things to, even in my mind, I thought this would help like raise my son in a calmer environment, and it has. But who I am as a man is still wanting more, still wanting to learn. So while physical reality has showed up in a certain way that looks like I've created success, that I'm still challenged with like the friendship part. I'm still and what I'm doing, I'm actually moving. I'm moving in June to a different area, but I took the learnings here. I made the best out of it. I still have community here. I still think it's beautiful here. But if I had not experienced what I experienced here, I probably would have never gotten that part of my communication that needed more softening. I was raised by a Marine. My dad was in the Marines for 30 years. I was literally raised by a commanding officer. So, and this place is so yin. It is so yin. So while I wanted to attract the house, the woman, and then this perfect environment, what I also attracted is how I needed to grow, the perfect environment. I would have never finished my book if I were not here, because I didn't have friends to hang out with or men. What did I do? I wrote my book.
Yeah.
So this is, and so I'm sharing this because I manifested this, but it still wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for my learning. The imperfection of it was the perfection of it, because I am softer. I am more relaxed.
Mm.
I've hopefully become more humbled. So,
That is so powerful. And sometimes in manifestation, people, especially when they start their journey and they're trying to figure it out, they get really down on themselves because they hear people say, well, if you don't like it, you manifested it. You manifested the debt. You manifested the relationship. Like it's a blame game. But I love what you're saying here. It's like taking responsibility, not even that it's all personal, because a lot of this is source, is this loving universe and that wants the best for you and what you've said you want, but just recognizing we co-created this, but without the shame of, well, you created it and then now what, right? Like we almost get shamed into like, why do I keep creating, or physical pain? You created that with your emotional this and that, but that doesn't serve us. So I'd almost love your perception if someone came to you and they've realized like, I'm the creator of all of this. So what about the things I'm creating that I really don't like, without shaming myself? I'd love to just hear you speak to that.
I don't know why I'm thinking of this, but so this is a friend of mine who I don't talk to anymore because he kind of got spun out on things. I'm not going to go into it. Maybe like too many ceremonies. I don't know, but I'm not judging it. But he had a ex-girlfriend. They kind of maybe were just hooking up here and there, but she became a friend of mine. She's really cool. We're still friends. And she went on a date, and this guy actually tried to like make out with her, grope her, and she ran out of his car. And of course, she was shocked and so forth, but she took care of herself. And when she spoke to my friend I'm talking about, he actually said that, well, how did you manifest that? How did you attract that? You know, like rather than really connect to the hurt that she was going through, and that connection for her to kind of discover what it was that she needed to discover within herself that created that or attracted that. You know, they ended their friendship. But I actually worked with her. I coached her. And, you know, what came from that for her was, first off, let's just recognize that fucking hurt. That was fucking scary. Right? Okay. So she needed to honor that for herself. And then it went into other situations where she feels as though that she ignored the red flags, to it led to, oh, like I need to speak from my truth. I need to become more authentic. And so she got the learning from that, and she didn't shame herself. But she did feel that initially from that other coach. So, you know, what's interesting about that, if we want to go deep for that, is we're very much in a black or white thinking culture. Bottom line. There's you know, there's like, you know, left, right. I mean, there's a middle ground to everything, and that's consciousness. And what I mean by that is, I'll give this example and then connect it to the shame. So Bashar teaches and I teach, and that is that there's never just two, there's a third. So like you and I just met for the first time, Talia. And while it's two, say, separate people, you know, you are where you live and I'm where I'm at, and we're sharing ideas, you and I together are becoming a third. There's a oversoul experience. There's a becoming of us. And so, you know, you and I just talking, you know, is creating more. And if you and I were to develop a great friendship, it would be built off of this mutual respect and so forth. And while our human experience would be focused on the idea that this person's cool and I could talk to her, this guy is a different type of guy and I feel like I can trust him, and all of that. What's happening to your consciousness, and my consciousness also, is what it's all about. And that is where I can trust more men. I can trust more women. I can be more myself. I can be more myself. And that creates positivity. And that energy is, you know, put out into the ethers for others to feel also that trust also. And so we humans, you know, we have the ability to create so much more. And this idea of shame comes from this, or this idea of, you know, good or bad. When we were growing up as children, and not all of us, but many of us, that we would say, want that cookie. And it was like 8 o'clock at night. And within our consciousness, we didn't know sugar was going to keep us up. We didn't know that our parents actually cared about us. But what we experienced was, say, rejection. Okay? We don't know that stuff. Okay? But we hear the word no, and no equals pain, right? And yet it was for our benefit. But we didn't know that. Okay? We say, do something well, whether we're performing, playing a guitar, or something. We see our parent smile when we do something good. And then when we do something that maybe is not so good, we see them not smile, recreate the idea that there was something wrong with us versus that whatever we did wasn't in agreement with our preferences.
Mm-hmm.
Hear the difference?
Mm-hmm.
What we did as an innocent child did not meet their expectations.
Yeah.
Versus I was wrong. And if more children, more adults were educated from this perspective, they'd recognize I was a fucking kid. I was never wrong. But I created the idea I was because early on I recognized in survival, and there's truth to this, and a lot of parents don't really want to this sounds very detached. When you're a little baby, meaning you're in that space, you see like objects. Yes, you might smell your mom. She smells familiar. And there's this idea that our children love us immediately. No. It's more that children are loved anyway, and that this person, this parent who's consistent, when we cry or we poop or whatever, this thing comforts us. And in time, we develop an attachment to our mother or father. And we create the idea that they support our emotional well-being. They help us when we feel discomfort. So our sense of self, our sense of protection, our sense of safety becomes about their response to us. So early on, we create kind of like a codependent relationship. And so when that parent is not lit up by something that we do, we think we did something wrong. Mm-hmm. And so with early development with children, it's very important for children to start understanding kind of like their own individual universe, and that the whole world does not revolve around them. And eventually, children start experiencing that 8, 9, 10 years old. But children who don't grow out of that, those are the adults you see where they take everything personally. Mm-hmm. They get defensive. They're always saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. They're people pleasers and so forth, because there's this unhealed part of themselves that they made their parents unhappy or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like we attach to that so early, especially the right, the wrong, as you said. And I know in the spiritual realm or manifestation, it's like if you're not getting your $10,000 extra a month, or if you're not getting the soulmate walking in by June 1st or whatever, you must be doing it wrong, which is also something, it kind of ties into what you're saying about your friend. It's like if something unfavorable happens, it's like, oh, what did you do wrong to attract that? Mm-hmm. But that's not at all. Like I believe, and from what I see, spiritually, energetically, there is no wrong. There's always trajectory and there's always momentum. So if we keep doing one thing, we'll create a really strong momentum in that direction. But we're not right or wrong. I even believe, some people like to hear it, some people don't. If we spend our whole life unhappy, or we become lost in addiction or whatever and never figure it out and then die, I believe we still exponentially learn. Our team loves us. We're greeted with love. We learn from it, and we take those lessons and fold them into our next life or whatever, however it works. But there really is no right or wrong. So if something happens, like what happened to your friend, we immediately go into like, I must have created that, shame, shame, shame. As you just said, it's like we're fueling those old patterns of, right, wrong, guilt, all this, and almost looking at it from a self-growth lens, trying to look at it from a self-growth lens, but it's really just a shame lens of what I must have done wrong.
Yes. I just noticed you have 2 lava lamps.
Yeah, I do. I do. That's what my inner being feels like at any one time. Like, whoa. It's really cool too what you said about those the third energy, and I relate to that with overtones. Is like in music, if you harmonize, if two notes or three people are harmonizing in proper harmony, there creates what's called an overtone, which is like the resonance. Yeah, and you can listen to that and it creates a whole new field. And I think that's what you were saying. Like there's you and there's me here, but even the physical conversation we're having is a different thing. What people are going to hear from it, the ripple effect, the energy in the room. We create so much that's beyond just the two, physical parts.
Yeah, absolutely. The third. So the whole concept of the Holy Spirit, the Father, and the Son, that's the Trinity. That's it. There's misinterpretations, or let's just say it's been translated a little bit differently, but Bashar explained that as well, is that's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the learning. It's not good, bad. There's more, there's meaning, there's all of this. The other day, I'll just really quickly, I was filling up gas, and it's funny, just relating to this question or the story you said about your friend. I was filling up with the gas, and this guy came up, and he was just coming on real strong. And he's like, "Oh, you look beautiful. And oh, your hair looks beautiful." Something. He's trying to make jokes. And immediately I was just uncomfortable because I just got this feeling of like, okay, what does he want? And he just kept coming on stronger and stronger. He was trying to sell me something that cleans your car or whatever, but he kept saying pretty lady and pretty lady this and that. And I kept saying, okay, I got to go. Like I legitimately was heading out of town, and I was like, I needed to go. I wasn't on time. I needed to, go. But I'm working on speaking up, literally speaking my truth, speaking up, boundaries, saying like, I have to go. Bye. Like I want to people please. I don't want to offend him. Maybe he'll wrap up, So he kept coming on, and I'm going, first of all, I don't want this car spray cleaning thing. Also, like, you're coming on really strong with this pretty lady stuff is like what I'm thinking in my head, moving closer to me physically. And I just really was getting this no feeling. And I heard inside, like, assert your boundaries, say no. Right. And so I'm like, listen, I really got to go. No, thank you. And he kept going and he kept going. And I was starting to just go like, is this going to turn ugly or what's happening here? And he kept stepping closer. And finally I said, you know what? Thank you. No, thank you. I got to go. And he had somehow passed me the solution thing he wanted to sell. And I put it back in his hand. I got to go. And I got in the car after, and it kind of left me rattled because it was really in my face and it felt creepy and it felt all this. And my first thought was like, I'm really working on my personal power and vocalizing it more than anything. Not just knowing who I am, being that when I need to have what people would say as boundaries, or being assertive, right? So being assertive can feel like aggression when you're not used to boundaries, when you're not used to having that voice, that inner energy or fire inside, personal power. And so I drove away going, good job, Talia. And I felt really proud of myself. And I've reflected, even though it just happened a few days, several times on how that was exactly what I've been going through. And it was a perfect opportunity to practice boundaries. I ended up being safe. It was fine. But I kept reflecting on, like, funny how that would just come up right in the period of time, like talking those weeks where I'm really looking at that, and literally speaking up to strangers was a theme. And I just thought that was such an interesting orchestration that happened there. And we could walk away going, that was bad, or that was this, or what the heck, or why am I attracting this? But I really walked away going, that was good. Like I feel a little bit of that sacral solar plexus-y energy of really saying no and moving on and not being, not wanting to just people please. So anyway, I just wanted to add that in because sometimes these little moments happen and I'll go, what was that helping me to practice? What was the medicine in that? Not just what a creep and ending on that thought, but actually that was powerful. That was hard for me to do. And I kept going, like, be a little bit more assertive. Okay. And I walked away going, okay, I'm proud of myself. I did it. So anyway, just wanted to share that little.
Yeah. There's some people like women could have that experience, and the person they say they tell to fuck off or to learn how to practice their boundaries, it's low risk. It's a stranger. So imagine a woman's like ignoring the red flags, attracting narcissistic men, and those men manipulating or crossing boundaries and them never learning how to say no, or because it's intimate, there's just more to risk. So I've seen women break out of that, and then you start dating some guys and that stuff starts to show up. And the way that, if they use it in a healthy way, is that those people who are just getting a no, which is why they call it dating, is for them to say, I don't want to go out with you on a second date, or I don't feel comfortable meeting you before it even happens. So it's just practice. And the universe is giving you that to practice. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I love the way that you say that. It's just so grounded and real. And, again, it's not us just creating stuff because we're bad and we're doing it wrong. It's these opportunities, these opportunities to practice these things. So I'd love to bring the conversation back to law of attraction. I also want to hear about your book and where we can find your book and everything, but I want to hear about the law of attraction. People watch The Secret, and I kind of just, what I want to ask is, what do you think people are, I want to say, where are we getting it wrong with law of attraction? But I've just spent 20 minutes saying how there's no right or wrong. But so many people find it and then say it doesn't work, or I've been trying to law of attraction money into my life, or a partner, whatever. What do you think is the part that we're missing as far as like mainstream stuff, manifestation? What do you think are some of the things that we're really missing the memo on to allow us to see it in a different perspective and actually, feel some of those things, like you're saying, the things you've manifested for yourself? So what do you feel most people are kind of missing in that, or how it's taught?
Well, most people are coming from scarcity, bottom line, scarcity. So they don't feel complete within. So the things that they want to attract is to complete them. But you can't do that by changing the world around you. I'll give you an example. This really happened. It's really interesting. There was a man who I worked with who wanted to make money, and he wanted to use that money to buy a Mercedes. But the reason why he wanted a Mercedes is because he thought it'd be easier to get the ladies. He thought it would make him look more worthy, attractive, and so forth. And what actually happened was this. He envisioned it, and there was a night where he hears this big crash. A car went off like the off-ramp and landed into his roof. It was a Mercedes. Okay? That really happened. And so, quite a wake-up call, literally. And so, when we're coming from a place of scarcity and negative emotions, that will override the things that we think we need. When we don't feel really good about ourselves, what we're emanating out there is more of what we'll attract. So the universe is unconditionally trying to say, we'll support you, but we want you to feel good. And we're gonna help you attract the things that seem like challenges to help like expedite your growth. Abraham shares this in a recording, and I have it saved. I'm not going to play it here, but it's a very difficult conversation for most people to hear, particularly parents or children who experienced, molestation or something like that. And a woman spoke at her seminar and said, and she had such a beautiful heart and beautiful voice. She said, well, how did I manifest this? I was an innocent kid. I wasn't doing anything. And this happened to me. And Esther answers in a very sensitive way. She said, we understand that as humans, how that could be. She said, but remember, when you're a little baby, your parents are offering vibration. When you are a baby and they're watching TV shows, it's offering vibrations and thoughts and beliefs. So a baby becomes kind of somewhat like a sponge. But she said this, she said, we have never met great creators who try to choose a simple life. She says that what we notice, those who become masters chose something early on so they can live most of their life, 70 years, experiencing the things they prefer in abundance. And that's what she said. And so in that, you can hear the woman like start to cry. It's a recording. And Esther, like you can hear and say, look at you, look at you. Look how beautiful you are. Like, and the woman, you can sense that she's glowing. She's like this evolved soul. And she wasn't talking negatively about whoever perpetrated her. She was just really trying to understand it, but she was healed already. But she wanted to ask the question.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I bring this up is that what we're manifesting in this now moment didn't just happen. It could be something that we picked up from our parents, our culture, the collective consciousness. Even this now moment, there's a lot of uncertainty because people really believe that their life is going to be shit until they know who won the elections. And they've been living in the space of uncertainty. And a way it's shown up in their life outside of the elections is there's uncertainty everywhere else in their own relationships, with their kids, with their work. And it's interesting how it's manifesting in their life, but they're projecting it onto the elections. Mm-hmm. And so that's, by the way, that's a part of my book where I talk about a collective healing release. Because what I do is how I shared that is I teach people how to recognize when you're triggered by what you see, particularly big events, that there's got to be some part of you that is working through this also. And you're working through this in this perfect time for this perfect reason. It's for you to get to a place of clarity and self-empowerment beyond what's happening with the elections. And so in my book, it helps you take personal responsibility and grow and move in a better direction, regardless of those experiences around you that you don't prefer.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That was so well said. I just agree so much. A lot of manifestation right from the very beginning is built on shaky foundation, not because the teachings are wrong, but because, as you said, it's built in lack. And that becomes a question of like, well, how do I want more money without acknowledging I don't have the money now, or I don't want to be single anymore. And I love Abraham totally cracked my head open to this, more than a decade ago about how when we're doing that, we're basically saying that like, I'm broken until I have that. Or, we're constantly, she would say, like, we're constantly realizing more of what we desire by seeing what we don't want, by seeing, a little bit of what we do want, a little bit of what we don't want. We're always learning. So if you're in a relationship and they're not the one, you close that chapter, you move forward, you have learned more about what you do want. You liked how we did those things and we traveled and they were really fun, but I didn't like how we couldn't communicate or how whatever, right? You're realizing more and more about what you want and what you don't want, what you desire, what you don't desire. But we tend to focus so much on what we don't want that's the springboard into manifestation. I don't want to be broke. I'm going to manifest money. I don't want to be sick. I'm going to manifest wellness. And as long as we're saying, I don't want to be broke, I don't want to be sick, unfortunately, that's all we hear. That's the operative word. That's the dominating energy is broke and sick. So, I totally agree with that. So much of manifestation is because I want something I don't have, and my life will be better when I have that. So I'd love to hear you even talk, even though this is what we've been talking about, but if there's anything else you want to say about that nuanced work of how do we desire something without living in the fact that we don't have it, and even just your personal take on that.
Yeah, really simple. As an example, I am working with a client, and yesterday, so he is waiting for something to settle. And when I say settle, it's not a lawsuit, but they finally are reaching an agreement. But it's like as if his life has been on hold for 6 months. And what I did was a guided imagery, and I invited him to recognize that there's a part of him that knows what he wants already, and that there's a part of him already living that life because everything exists from this now moment. I said, because if that were not true, you wouldn't be experiencing the contrast right now. So in this moment, you know what you don't prefer and you know what you prefer. And until we experience this contrast we don't know. I said, however, that part of you, that version you want to be, it's not going to happen when they say sign a contract. It actually needs to happen now. It has to happen now. And I want you to pretend it just happened. Who would you be? How would you be operating? And so that is his homework assignment. And for him to step into that, and he's practicing that. And that would be where he's calmer. He's more present with his family. He is more relaxed about work, like all these things. Because when we start acting in that, not only are you going to start feeling better, that you'll start attracting more what you prefer. It's kind of what Bashar said. You got to put it into physical reality. You got to put it into action. That's the bottom line. So when people hear this, you can go down this complicated processing path like you talked about where, oh God, I want to process. Listen to this. The universe loves progress more than processing. Bottom line, creation loves progress more than processing. Not that one is inferior and the other one's superior. It's that the creation just keeps becoming more and more and more. So why not get on that wave? Bottom line. And so it could be just listening to this, and some people might go, God, I got to read his book and then I'll figure life out. Or another person would go, you know what? I'm going to go get my nails done. Work was a little bit slow, but I'm going to do some self-care and just be in that space that it would be like if, money was coming in, and like, as an example, I remember, I don't know when it was, like maybe 15 years ago, like there was maybe a month that it was a little bit slower. And I actually went on a vacation anyway. And then all of a sudden I got all these phone calls. All of a sudden I got booked up again. And it was because I was so focused on how it was supposed to happen. I was collapsed, and the universe was unconditionally saying, you're not even available. So when I started to relax, all the clients started to show up.
But it's so easy to say, well, when I make the money, I'll relax, right? When I retire, I'll have fun in my life. When I lose the weight, I'll be confident in my body. When I get the client, I'll feel confident in my business. And it's just not, it keeps us always chasing. I need this to feel this. That's like the be, do, have, right? It's like, I feel this. I need to do these things to have what I want, and then I'll be happy. And I need to do these things and have what I want, and then I'll be happy. When I have what I want, I will do the things that people do when they're rich, and then I'm going to be happy. And it's just, we have to lead with that being. And I love the way that you say that, and the stories, clients, and your own stories. It's just the way that it works. And it can, I just want to say to everyone listening, it can sound easy, and then it can also feel really tough. And I, deal with, chronic pain in my body, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of things going on in our real life that triggers us, that wants to pull us into that, what we don't want. But the other option is always available. That other option of, focusing more on what we do want. And I love that you said, like, being as if it did happen. And that's why even things like Neville Goddard is so powerful when he do his ladder experiment and he get his students to, before they go to bed, because there's very little resistance, imagine themselves climbing a ladder. That's it. Like, very little resistance to that. Like you said, the open parking spot, no big deal. So they'd picture themselves climbing a ladder. And sure enough, within a week, 2 weeks, all of his students that were in his class would go, oh my God, I found myself climbing a ladder. Yes. The weirdest thing, a neighbor asked me to help them and the light bulb went out. And like, I thought that was crazy, but sure enough, I found myself climbing a ladder because they were just imagining it over and over as they're going to sleep into the subconscious mind. And that's, basically what you're saying with your client is like imagining it as if it has happened. And it's not faking. When people say fake it till you make it, I always reframe that into be it until you become it, because
yes.
It's not faking. Because as soon as you're faking, your brain's smart. Your brain is fucking smart. And it's going to say, you're not a millionaire when you're like, oh, I'm a billionaire. No, we got to get in that sneaky side door where we feel it as if it's real without feeling like we're also faking it. I like to mentally rehearse as well. I like to help people with that because sometimes that resistance is so strong. Like, I don't know what I would feel if I was a millionaire. Well, let's mentally rehearse. When we're calling in money, it's like, imagine yourself holding $100 bill. Like, you've held one before. Just imagine what it was like when you held one before, or whatever we're doing, not faking, being it. And that's, yeah, it's a fine line. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your book and where people can find you. And if there's anything else you want to add to this beautiful conversation about law of attraction, creating the things we want, is there anything else that you want to say?
No, I'm good. As far as my book, it's in 35,000 different stores. However, Amazon is primarily where I direct people, and I will provide a link for you. At the moment, it's free on Kindle. I became a bestseller, and the book is very easy to get through. I'm not one to put a lot of words, and I like to cut out the fat and just help people get the results. So it's kind of like a book and workbook. Read the reviews. You'll see people will tell you that they were experiencing benefits within a couple of chapters. So, and then also my website, which is www.raydoktor.com, but you'll also put the link there as well. And we'll be offering a group coaching experience where I'm not sure if we're going to do it for free for a month. Like what it is that we're more moving in a direction to allow people who are curious about coaching to actually see it in real time. So one of my excitements is when I have a bunch of people, say, in a room or Zoom call where they can actually ask stuff in real time. And what's interesting in that, you know this already, synergistically, people who show up are working with the same stuff. Yeah. So vicariously, they heal. I mean,
definitely. And what's the book called again?
All it takes is one. Drop your one big hidden belief and master your life.
That sounds so great. And I'll put Dr. Ray's book, all the information, your website, everything down below so that people can reach out and find you and keep up to date with all these cool things you have going. I just want to say thank you from one soul to another who's here to help people in the way that we can. And, it's not new information, but it's how we deliver it. And so many people, it's timeless information as you're pulling from Bashar and Abraham and all these people. It's truth. It's how this experience works. And the way you say it is so refreshing and easy to understand. And I just thank you so much for taking all your experience and really bringing it forward in a way that's just obviously helps a lot of people. So thank you so much for that and for coming here today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Had a good time.
Check out everything down below, Dr. Ray's books and everything that he's got going on. And I'm sure we will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode on the Awakening Her podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation between me and my guest. And if you did, we would love to hear from you. Come find us on Instagram. All the links are below in the show notes. Take a screenshot that you're listening to this episode, sharing your takeaways or your enthusiasm for the show. Tag us both over on Instagram. And if you do that, I will send you a free gift. I really do hope you enjoyed this conversation, and I will see you in the next episode.